think I've heard a lot of South African commentators talk about this game. Um, they think the wet conditions might favor the Boks. I think going to a Bok DNA, although that's exactly what I said, I think it's the best opportunity for South Africans to win. But am I convinced that this Wallaby team will crumble? I don't think so. One thing you have to understand about this Australian side, this Wallaby side, which is sending shivers down my spine, to be frank, is that if you noticed, after they won the game against South Africa, they didn't celebrate like they won a World Cup. They knew they had done a job on the South Africans, but they didn't go mental on the field. Of course, they were happy. They did celebrate. But looking at their reactions, it wasn't over the top, which to me is showcasing a team that is building confidence. They're not here just to win at Ellis Park. They're here to win the whole thing. The second thing is that if you notice the 3-test series against the Lions, the Wallabies didn't stop playing footy in that third game when it was pouring. The conditions were horrible, but they adapted faster than the Lions did, and they played the conditions better than the Lions did. And I reckon if they play the way they played against the Lions in that third test, I think South Africa, watch out. The other thing is, I think this has dented the South African confidence. It has made them question everything that South Africa had believed in. They believed their own hype in terms of, their invincibility in Ellis Park. That's been shattered. The fact that we thought this was going to be an Ebenezer versus Will Skelton, contest, that was shattered. It was actually an Ebenezer versus Nick Frost competition. Will Skelton didn't even have a major impact. I'm not saying he didn't have an impact, but I think, um, it wasn't as much as everyone anticipated. They played without the impact of Will Skelton, and they still dominated. And if you notice the way that guys like Max Jorgensen or Swali'i or Tom Wright, how they weren't phased when they were, experiencing that onslaught. Tom Wright dropped the ball several times in the first 20 minutes, but that didn't dent his confidence. They were all very composed. And I'm telling you something, this Australian team has tasted adversity like no other team. Maybe Wales is probably the only other team that's going through a rough patch, but this Australia team experienced something similar last year. They have gone through the doldrums. They have tasted what it's like to be at the lowest ebb, the lowest of the low. And their growth has been phenomenal. And I think this is not a team that you can bully. This is not a team that you can, put fear in their hearts, because they've seen it all and they've withstood it all. With their backs against the wall, they have not gone away. I mean, the sheer audacity of how Max Jorgensen defended, not just scored. I'm talking about how he defended those 3 Springbok players in that broken play. The confidence he had, the decision making that he made. People tend to forget he's only like 22, or I don't know. He's very, very young. The decision making was of like a mature player. This Springbok team is something special, man. And unless you're able to keep that momentum up for 80 minutes, which I doubt that this Springbok team is able to do, the Wallabies are going to take it. My prediction overall, I think that for the Wallabies, they're not celebrating it like they won the World Cup. The job's not done for the Australians until they win this year's Rugby Championship. They want to win the Bledisloe. They're coming after the Bledisloe. Everyone thought that Auckland is going to be the biggest game this year. Everyone thought France versus the Springboks is going to be the biggest game this year. And everyone, forgot. And that's exactly what I think Joe Schmidt would want as well, to go under the radar, to be underestimated. And, they just found the way. They found the weakness in the Springbok game plan and they exploited it. And I think a lot of other teams will be watching how the Springbok team is playing and the ways in which opposition team are maneuvering and getting around and turning what was considered South Africa's strengths into weaknesses. I think this this game is going to be really interesting because we are going to see South Africa play their style of rugby, and let's see if they can sustain it for 80 minutes. The oxygen is going to be equal for both teams. They're playing at sea level, so it's going to be easier on the lungs. But man, this is going to be a heck of a game, and don't expect the Wallabies to go away. I'm talking to the Springbok fans who think that they're going to come back, they're going to bash the Australians, they're going to go through the middle and so on and so forth. But honestly, I'm not saying that all South African fans are thinking this way. I think there's enough doubt created because literally, if on paper before any game started, people would have anticipated that Ellis Park would have been South Africa's. If Australia were to win against the South Africans, it would have been in Cape Town. So now let's see how they go. So yeah, my prediction is that it's going to be 21 points to Australia, 12 or 15 to South Africa. 21 to 15. That's the show. Less noise, more detail. If you're new, hit subscribe, drop a comment. Is Tony Ball dead? Or do we snap back to Bok DNA? What would you change in the match day 23? This is Rugby from the Stands. See you after Cape Town.